Welcome and good evening to the City of Shakopee City Council meeting for March 15, 2016. Please call the roll.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Luce.
Here.
Councilmember Lehman.
Here.
Councilmember Whiting.
Here.
Councilmember Mokel.
Here.
Mayor Mars.
Here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving to item number 3, approval of the agenda. Are there any changes, corrections, additions?
Nothing from staff, sir.
Councilmember Lehman?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I have a second by Councilor Whiting. Any discussion? Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Moving ahead then to consent business. Are there any changes, additions, subtractions? Councilmember Lehman?
4B3.
4B3. Others? Is that a motion? Councilmember Lehman?
Move the consent agenda as modified.
And a second?
Second.
Councilperson Moko seconded. Before we vote, we'll have a reading of the consent minus 4B3.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The consent agenda items for March 16th, 2016 are as follows. 4A1 adopts resolution number 7699, which issues a negative declaration of the need for an environmental impact statement for the Shakopee High School expansion. 4A2 adopts resolution number 7698, which approves the final plat of the Minden addition. 4A3 adopts ordinance number 930, which approves the rezoning of 10 properties adjacent to Hilldale Drive east from rural residential to Seward rural residential. 4B1 declares 7 forfeited vehicles held by the police department as surplus property and authorizes their proper sale or disposal. 4B2 declares 1 2001 Interstate 8x24 cargo trailer held by the police department as surplus property and authorizes its proper sale or disposal. 4C1 adopts resolution number 7695, which approves plans and specifications and orders an advertisement for bids for the 2016 street reconstruction project number 2016 TAC 1. 4C2 adopts resolution number 7696, which approves plans and specifications and orders an advertisement for bids for the 2016 bituminous reclamation project 2016 TAC 3. 4C3 adopts resolution number 7697, which approves plans and specifications and orders advertisement for bids for the 2016 bituminous overlay improvement project number 2016 TAC 2. 4C4 approves a grading permit for an access road to the future SMSC Cultural Center. 4C5 adopts resolution number 7694, which restricts parking on Southbridge Parkway from CSAH 21 to CSAH 21/18 for city project number 2016 TAC 2. 4C3 authorizes the appropriate city officials to enter into a cleaning contract with Treasure Enterprises Incorporated for seasonal park restroom cleaning from April 1, 2016 through March 31, 2017. 4E1 adopts resolution number 7700, which authorizes the appropriate city officials to submit a local trail connections program application for the Memorial Park Bridge. 4F1 approves the payment of bills and electronic transfers in the amount of $1,355,106.15. 4F2 grants a therapist license to Brianna Olson and a massage therapy business license to Massage by Bree, LLC, 100 Fuller Street, Suite number 2015, and grants a therapist license to David Thompson and a massage therapy business license to Be Here Now Bodywork, LLC, 100 Fuller Street, Suite number 230.
Thank you very much. Further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Consent business is passed unanimously. Moving ahead then to item number 5. I'd like to recognize any citizen that would like to come forward and speak on an item not on the agenda. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome.
I'm Brad Edstrom. I live at 1282 Granite Court. And I just want to say what a great job it is seeing 3 honest people on the council now. I don't like what I read in Shakopee Valley News. I don't think they're very fair. They're very honest. I think they were missing back when Mark McNeil got sneakily fired out of here and all the dirty dealings that certain people had. I think Shakopee Valley News was missing when we did this community center and all the dirty deals that a certain 3 did to get it passed. But where was Shakopee Valley News when that stuff was going on? But no, now that it's getting honest and fair, we got to squawk. Well, that's poo-poo too bad to you, and you know what I mean. Thank you, and you 3, the honest people, Mars, Mr. Lehman, Mr. Luce.
Let's not
Keep up
use
the good
any
work.
names here. Let's just speak your mind. And thank you very much for your comments. This is where you can come forward and speak before the council. Please state your name and address for the record. Please sign in. Seeing none, let's go move ahead then to item number 7, which is business that was removed from the consent business. There was one item, 4B3. Counselor Lehman?
Mayor, I took it off consent because I have a couple of minor concerns, and I don't know the answers, and I didn't have a chance to research it, so.
Do you have questions of staff?
Well,
Or
we know that this department has some unique challenges, and you can read this a couple different ways, but from my own personal experience being in the same position that we find our fire chief in, managing multiple levels of people, you'll find that your lowest level frontline folks are your success. And reading it, it looks like we're almost building a circle around the open door policy and attitude of upper management. It looks like a military standpoint, and we're not the military. But I guess what I'm missing here is, in my own mind, I'm going through and I'm saying, okay, if one of my frontline workers had a concern and they went to the next level, what stops that next level from taking a concern, reading it, and throw it in a garbage can? I mean, do we have specific policies and accountabilities in place up that chain so that that doesn't happen? Because when it does happen, you've lost trust, responsibility, and accountability. And it's really hard to rebuild them things.
Chief Coleman?
Yeah, if you go to our city handbook, once they go to the, a firefighter would go to a lieutenant. If the lieutenant didn't handle their problem or didn't resolve what they wanted done, in the city handbook, they can go to the next, go to a station captain, and then they'd go to a deputy chief, and then to an assistant chief, and then to me. At any time, anybody can come talk to me. This is just to keep everything moving smoothly. I'm not trying to get out of talking to anyone, but this is no different. We've ran this way for the last 29 years that I've been on this department. It's just we finally put it on paper.
Well, I guess what I'm asking is the fine details are on paper also. In the handbook?
Correct. There's stuff in the handbook that covers you can move up.
So if a frontline worker was to bring an item up to a lieutenant, and that lieutenant makes a decision, are you aware of that decision at some point in the process?
Some point in that process, I'd be made aware of that position or whatever the decision was. But I'm putting my trust in them officers to make them decisions. If we're not going to give the officers the ability to make them decisions, why do we have them officers? We might as well get rid of them all and just have everybody come to me to make them decisions.
Well, the reason you want to be aware of that decision is because you can't have the accountability in the people that you've put in these positions without knowing what they're doing.
Correct. We have a staff meeting once a month, an officer staff meeting, where all that stuff comes forward to me, all in one room.
Okay?
I just, Chief Coleman, follow up. I'm trying to read here in paragraph 3, and item number D and E, so a firefighter will be signed an officer for administrative purposes. Is that the next leading officer that would be coming up?
Well, we're assigning each firefighter to a officer for them to go and, it's somewhat of a mentor and somewhat of a, hey, this is the person you go to when you have a problem. So that's not for when we're on the fire ground. We have, the regular chain of command through NIMS on the fire ground.
Okay. Counselor Whiting?
Yeah, I think, as we have rank, we have that. You good? Okay. As you have your rank, you have training, and that's the training that people come to. Now, when a frontline person comes to their lieutenant, that decision may be something that isn't going up the chain of command because that lieutenant knows the answer to that question and can handle it. And that's what you just talked about, responsibility. That command structure, I think, is critical to have for safety of our firefighters. And those minor decisions, I don't think we need to have you as chief necessarily involved in.
Councilmember Lehman?
Ultimately, it's the chief's responsibility for all of these positions and the oversight. If you have multiple lieutenants making different decisions, it falls on the chief to build that consistency. So if he doesn't know what them decisions are being made, whether they're different or the same, and that's why I asked that question. If eventually this information is getting to you so that you can see if there's inconsistencies and correct the ship
Correct.
before it
Any
crashes.
time a decision is made on the department, it gets to me. It might not get to me that day, but
Yep.
within a week, I'm hearing what's going on.
Councilmember Whiting?
Yeah, it's just that most of those decisions are handled under a standard operating procedure that you've trained your lieutenants and captains on.
Correct. Most of the stuff we do is all under standard operating guidelines.
Okay. Council, do you have more?
I'll make the motion if you'd like to.
Councilmember Luce had a question of the chief.
My question is, when a lieutenant brought it to someone above him's attention that someone above him, the lieutenant, was doing things that were improper, he lost his lieutenant's position. And that happened just less than a year ago.
And nobody lost their lieutenant position because they brought something to a captain.
Well, it sure looked that way.
That didn't happen.
I would just reinforce.
That's a personnel issue.
I would
so-
reinforce if they're not doing it properly, then maybe they should lose their position.
Correct.
Yeah.
Does, I just have a general question of maybe staff. Is police department have a similar chain of command, or is this a different organization? These organizations structurally, I think, should look roughly the same.
Yes, Mayor. Most of your fire departments and police departments in the United States operate under a chain of command system, most professional ones.
Councilmember Whiting?
I'll make the motion to adopt Resolution 7701, a resolution adopting the above chain of command as policy number 6.
I have a motion and a second by Councilor Mokel. Further discussion? Councilmember
At some
Lehman?
point, I'd like to read this handbook portion.
Sure. We can get it to you.
Other discussion? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1 with Councilor Luce in the opposition. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now we will recess for our EDA authority meeting. Councilmember Lehman?
Motion recess to the EDA.
Councilmember Mokel?
I'll second.
Okay. Stand in recess. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? We stand in recess.
Call the EDA board can you call or take the roll?
Yes.
And the only thing we have is our bill list. So does anyone have anything they want to speak about? Matt?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And
I'll make a motion to approve the consent business.
anyone say?
Second.
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Consent business, that's all we have. Anyone want to make a motion to adjourn? Matt, go ahead.
Motion to adjourn to April 19th.
Second.
Right date?
Motion and seconded. All in favor?
Is that the right date?
19th.
Just 1 minute, is that the correct
Or
date?
is it the 5th? That would be the 19th.
A second meeting. That is correct.
Yeah.
That's correct?
19th.
All right.
Second meeting.
We are adjourned.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
All opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. I'm gonna give Bill back his hammer.
Reconvene the March 15, 2016 City Council meeting. And we're going to pick up here on 10A1, rezoning of a property of major recreational to light industrial, and staff will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the audience. Before you is an application, two parts. One is to rezone property from major recreation to light industry, and a comprehensive plan amendment to guide the property for industrial use, and a PUD plan unit development amendment. Property in question with this application is located on 4th Avenue. You can see identified by the plan. This is a larger plan. You can see the site. It's just south of the Canterbury Park complex, surrounded on three sides, north, east, and west by industrial zone developments. United Properties is the applicant. Canterbury Park Holdings is the property owner. United Properties is looking to develop the site for industrial uses. What is on the screen is a concept plan that they are proposing. Should the rezoning, the reguiding, and the PUD amendment get approved, they would have to wait for Met Council to also approve the comprehensive plan element of this application, but following that, if everything is approved, they would come forward with a final plat, potentially conditional use permit, depends on what the final design is. Again, this is a concept plan showing two industrial buildings, about 440,000 square feet. Their preliminary plans do show compliance with city code requirements. This was, again, kind of a conceptual elevation of the proposed buildings if approved. As they've stated, again, the concept plan shows two buildings. It could also just be one larger building, but they just wanted to identify how the site could potentially work and meet the city code requirements. The rezoning to industrial I-1 would bring this site generally in compliance with properties to the east, west, and north. The balance of the Canterbury Park property would remain in the major rec zone. This parcel was platted as an outlot with Canterbury Park 6th edition, which the council recently saw. Should again this be approved, we'd see just a final plat. There would be no need for a preliminary plat as this is already preliminary platted with part of that Canterbury 6th edition. The re-guiding is to bring it in compliance with the rezoning for industrial use. Again, the properties to the east, west, and north are all industrial. So, and this is kind of separated from the rest of the complex, the Canterbury Park complex, by grade purposes. It is at about this point where the elevation is a little bit higher. This is kind of the lower elevation area. It's where they used to have the concert series in the last few years. if this is approved, Canterbury would have to look at different locations for their concert series. So, and the PUD amendment is just to remove this piece from the Canterbury Park plan unit development. This portion was included in the PUD. Industrial uses is not a listed use in the plan unit development for this site, so thus the request to remove that from the plan unit development element. Planning Commission did look at this, or recommended approval 5-1 for the council to recommend or to approve this. Did not receive any comments from neighbors at the public hearing. Did have good input with the Planning Commission and the applicant. And staff also supports recommending approval of this application. So, are there any questions for staff?
Questions of staff? Councilmember Lehman?
The underlying PUD typically gives the benefit to the citizens or city, you know, in a larger green space or whatever amenity it might be. So under criteria 6, if I'm reading that correct, we're gonna trade off that specific amenity, which is currently there. Proposed development will afford a greater general public benefit than would be realized under the underlying zoning district or general zoning provisions. It doesn't really say exactly what it is, but
Yeah, part of the discussion the Planning Commission had with the applicant and amongst themselves was just whether this was an appropriate site for major recreation. And just based on the surrounding properties being industrial in nature, they just didn't feel that this really worked good as a major rec type of use or site. Therefore, they were supporting the change. This site would have to comply with the design standards of the light industry zone or seek a conditional use permit or variance should they want to exceed that. They're well aware of the design standards, and as identified in that site plan, their building materials consistent, heights consistent with what the city code requirements are. So we feel we would get a good product here should this be rezoned for industrial. There's adequate area balance of Canterbury. I think they're approximately 400 acres in size. This is 24 acres. So we got 376 acres of major rec zone land that can be utilized for major rec type uses. We are running short of industrial land, so this meets a demand. I don't think United Properties would be looking to build. Not even a spec building, they would just build, anticipate they're gonna have occupancy, so.
Other questions of staff? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
Would the applicant and/or their representatives like to come forward and make a comment in regard to this request? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff. My name's Bob Cunningham. I'm representing Canterbury Park this evening. Mr. Noble touched on many of the important factors of why Canterbury's looking to sell this property to United Properties, who we deem to be one of the best industrial developers in the metro area. But one of the things that, if you don't mind, Mr. Noble, if I could just have that aerial photograph for just 1 second, please. Yes. One of the things that's just probably worth touching on is this access point on 4th Avenue to Canterbury Park is going to remain intact and unchanged. And that is the comment that I wanted to make this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Questions of the applicant? Councilmember Lehman?
what's directly to the east of that driveway?
To the east is Mr. Mayor, members of the council, to the east is a stormwater detention pond associated with the Sandmar development that's a little bit further to the east of that.
Okay.
Other questions of the applicant? If not, thank you.
Thank you.
It's not a public hearing. Councilor Whiting?
I'll offer for adoption resolution number 7702, approving the comprehensive plan amendment to guide this property for industrial use and amending the Canterbury Park PUD overlay zone number 3 by removing outlot I, or 1, I'm not sure, Canterbury Park 6th edition from the PUD, and ordinance number 931 approving the rezoning of outlot I, or 1, to light industrial zone and move its adoption.
Thank you. Councilmember Mokel?
I'll second.
Great. Motion and a second on the table. Discussion? Councilmember Lehman?
I think it makes sense for what's on both sides of it. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it's actually a pretty good fit.
Okay. I think my comments are, even to address criteria number 6, a greater general public benefit. I mean, this is undeveloped land right now. We talk about the major recreational area that Canterbury's had for, 30-plus years, and it was a big ring around that thing, and development was supposed to happen, and development hasn't for whatever reasons. And this does make sense because there's light industrial to the north and to the east and to the west. And I think this actually puts a business on there, can generate taxes at a higher level than currently. So I think this is a kind of a win-win for all parties, Canterbury. I think the city does get something out of it, and I think a new use is developed out of it. So that's kind of my comment on this. Are there further comments? Councilor Lewis?
I think the police department will be happy with this too, since they won't have to deal with the concert again.
Other discussion? All in favor? This would need a supermajority?
Mr. Mayor, the comprehensive plan amendment does.
Okay.
And it was all one motion, so you can vote on it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. Moving ahead then to 10F1, which is City Hall financing, and Mr. Reynolds will present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted that we now have a full-time finance director who can walk us through some of the things that we've been talking about internally in regards to the financing of the potential City Hall project. As you know, this project has been in discussion for some time. It got its latest legs in early April of 2015, and a construction manager was then brought forward in July of 2015, and then we've been progressing down through the process up to this point where we're trying to figure out how we're going to pay for everything if we do go forward. So Mr. Nelson will talk a little bit about that, and if you have any questions, it's very important that you ask, because we want to make sure everybody understands what it is that we're talking about. This isn't particularly easy to understand, and so if you don't have an understanding of it, then clearly the public isn't going to have an understanding of it, and we want to make sure that everybody knows what it is we're doing and the impact that it will have, or lack thereof.
Thank you. Darren, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. In your packet was a memo kind of explaining the financing sources and for the construction of a new City Hall. It's a combination of transfers from various funds over various years, and then along with an internal interfund loan as well. And so I'll kind of go through each piece of that and just make sure that everybody's cognizant or understands how the financing of that works. And if you have questions on a specific area, please don't hesitate to jump in, and we can go through it again, because it's complicated stuff. I looked at it last week and I came back on Monday. I'm like, where we're at again. And so it takes a while to really get your hands around this. So, but it looks like we can do it all internally. We don't have to necessarily bond for it, go outside with outside funding and such like that. We have enough reserves and funds available and other sources to finance this internally. So the first item we have is a transfer of $330,000 that the council actually approved back in February of this year, and that was for an expired TIP, or not TIP district, but debt service fund that from 2004 that had some fund balance remaining in that. So we had transferred that amount as of 2015 over to the City Hall Construction Fund already. So that happened, I believe that was the first meeting in February, I believe. So that's already said and done, but that's just one piece of our financing source. The next source is
That's just a question, if we're gonna go through these a little bit, the 330, transferred from the old debt service fund in regard to that bond, that was just excess dollars, right?
Right, so it was probably special assessments that got paid in at certain points in time, and sometimes if you get prepayments ahead of time, we'll be able to earn interest on those and such, and so it's excess fund balance remaining
Thank
on
you.
that fund.
I understand that, thank you.
Absolutely. The next source is $1.7 million from the Building Internal Service Fund. We'll call it the Government Building Asset Internal Service Fund. That's the official name of it. It's a mouthful, so I'm just gonna go with Building Fund tonight. That is the fund that we charge every department and every fund rent revenue every year. And so we accumulate funds into that internal service fund just for this purpose of either constructing new facilities or repairing or replacing major building equipment needs on that end of it. So that fund has about $5.7 million in it as of December 31st, 2015. Looking at 10-year projections and such, taking $1.7 million of that fund balance for a new city hall construction would be feasible and still allows that fund to have enough reserves in place to pay for other major building repair needs or outlay throughout the next decade or so on that end of it.
Mr. Nelson, just a
Yep.
comment on that. Just the Government Building Asset Internal Service Fund, the building fund, that's actually where we save money and buildings pay rent in it, so we can build a new building or repair a building. And that's kind of like what I refer to it as a depreciation fund, but it's a savings account to replenish a building when time comes up to replace that building or to repair it. It's something we've had in our community for a long time. Councilmember Lehman?
Mayor Mars, we actually changed that fund, was it last council or council before, to more define what can be used out of it. It's more for your, a roof, air conditioner, heater replacement. It's not for the little things, it's more for the
Big ones.
brick and mortar type
Okay.
things.
Councilmember Whiting?
Now, we're leaving $4 million in that fund, and you talked about some reserves. Is that projected out, that we're gonna need that money for different projects in the future?
Correct. Looking at the CIP portion of the budget, there are capital outlay items. I believe there's, a roof for, I don't know if it's Public Works or Engineering Building, one of those two in the next, number of years. That's, several $100,000 on that end of it. Those type of replacement items that Councilmember Lehman had mentioned are the ones scheduled out there. So we want to make sure that,
We have $4 million scheduled out there.
well, not all through 10 years. We probably have some excess reserves there after 10 years, but we still have things that'll happen in years 10 through 15 and 15 through 20 as well.
And I think it's important to understand that this 1.7 is a conservative number. Theoretically, we could hit that fund harder, but this is on the conservative side of what we decided to allocate.
Correct.
And, Mayor,
Councilmember Lehman?
and I would point out that $4 million that's remaining in that building fund for them big items that come along, there's a revenue stream every year coming into that additionally to the 4 that's in there. So we're actually being very conservative because we don't have $4 million worth of projected capital outlay today. But if we did, by the time they actually come on board 5 or 6 years, 10 years down the road, that fund is gonna have new revenue stream into it.
And actually, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lehman, that fund, it does have money coming into it. The City Hall facility pays about $90,000. Last year was $90,000 or so of revenue that the departments here contributed towards that fund. But that building fund itself has revenues coming in, but it does have revenues or expenditures going out now to pay off the Public Works bond that was issued a number of years ago. So there is a pretty big expenditure going out of that for every year as well too. So there isn't a lot of excess funds each year. So that's why maintaining that balance is important for the next decade or so.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Lewis?
What's the amount of excess funds that we do have per year that is coming in?
I don't have it off the top, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it was right around less than $100,000, I believe. I think it was like 460 going out and then like 550 coming in or so, 560 coming in each year. So, you know, right around that $100,000 mark or so is kind of what the net amount. So not a lot of excess reserves over the next.
Proceed.
The next one is another $400,000 coming out of the building internal service fund again. And that is a loan that was made to the property acquisition fund either last year or the year before. There was a $500,000 loan made to that fund to purchase properties throughout the city on that end of it. That fund will be paying back the building internal service fund at increments of $50,000 for the next, there's 8 years remaining on it, so that's $400,000. That amount hadn't necessarily been included in our CIP projections for looking at a bottom number or bottom fund balance number. So we have $400,000 there that we can, as that comes in increments of $50,000 a year, we can divert that over to the City Hall construction fund at that point.
I have a question in regard to that. So we had, is something borrowed some money out of this fund and is paying it back at 50 grand a year. And what we're saying is we'll just allocate that portion towards funding the city hall. Right. And how does that, I guess, back on Councilmember Lewis's question then, how does that affect the replenishment? You said if there was a roughly, and we'll never hold you this number, 100,000 in excess per year, would that then go down to 50 or?
Honestly, I don't recall offhand, Mr. Mayor. I think it was considered outside of that amount.
All right.
That's why I was able to utilize this 400,000, is that it wasn't taken into projections down the road. So it might have been looked at it as, okay, this year, yes, $40,000 or $50,000 is coming in, but it hadn't been considered into the fund balances into the future going forward.
We already borrowed and then we're paying it back and then just saying
Just redirecting
in and
it.
out and then we, okay. I understand that. Councilmember Whiting?
I don't understand it completely, but, so is the $400,000 for property acquisition still gonna be there for that use?
Yes, that fund has that amount, and I believe we have been kind of levying for that, or within our levy, that $50,000 has been kind of considered for that fund, that it'll be redirected back to the building internal service fund to pay that back over 10 years. So that $500,000 is there. I think you've used a couple $100,000 of it for purchases already. But yes, and it's paying that back on an incremental basis.
So that paying back will go into this fund rather than the balance of the fund?
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
Other question, Councilmember Lewis?
Just so I've got it straight here now, we're gonna take that money and put it towards the City Hall fund, and then we're gonna pay it back 50,000 per year until the fund is built back up.
No, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, we're gonna collect $50,000 a year from that property acquisition fund, collect it in the building internal service fund, and we'll move it back out to the City Hall construction fund to replenish that fund that'll meet those dollars.
Councilmember Lewis, or Lehman, I'm sorry.
The property acquisition fund owes the building fund this money.
Yep.
And it's making payments $50,000 a year
Right.
back to the building fund. We're just gonna take, as we receive the payments into the building fund, that property acquisition owes it, we're gonna take that $50,000 per year and put it over into the city hall fund.
But we're actually gonna be spending that 400,000 today.
Right.
How do we spend it if we're not taking it out of the fund?
It would be internal, it would be kind of an internal,
We're not talking about the 400, we're talking about the, oh, nope, we are, never mind, yep.
so we spend that money on the front end, and then we would have, there'd be internal borrowings basically that covers the fund deficit, and that fund would be at a deficit for some time, and then we would just replenish that fund as time goes on. So
So
at the end of 10
that's basically what I said the first time, was that we're gonna move that fund into the City Hall fund, and then we're gonna pay that fund back per year.
It's gonna go from this loan back into the building fund, out of the building fund to pay for City Hall, and then in the end, City Hall's gonna pour back into the building fund. We should have a couple cups here.
Actually, City Hall will end up putting more back into the building
Right.
fund because
Right.
it's building
And we'll
rental is
get,
gonna be
and
higher
we'll get to
than
that
this
when we're
building.
done. All right, let's see, is everybody more understanding of point number 3 here? Or more questions?
As long as we have the money for property acquisition, if we ever.
Well, yep, okay, move
Yes,
it.
Mayor, Councilmember Whiting, that fund, that
Right.
money is still there for property acquisition. That is
There you
not
go.
being considered to pull that back.
Continue.
The next one is $220,000 of future CIP projects. So we have a project in 2016 and a project in 2022 for this current City Hall facility. And obviously, since those are off the table, that building internal service fund would have funds available that we hadn't projected in the future, so that we could dedicate 220,000 of that this year.
So you already have in the CIP money budget for City Hall that would no longer be used for this building. And can you give us one idea of one example of that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I think there was an HVAC unit or a heating cooling unit on one end of the building that's,
Yep.
$50, $60, $70,000 on that end of it.
We wouldn't spend on that, so
Right,
you're.
and I think carpeting was maybe another one down the road in 2022 or something to that nature.
More questions on this 220 part of it? On the CIP? If not, thank you. Continue.
I want to skip over the next one because the next one's really complicated.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
No. So the next one is $1.2 million from the Building Internal Service Fund.
We need
That's
more
not-
cups?
We're gonna need lots of cups here. And so that's not a one-time transfer, that's gonna be an annual transfer over 10 years. And so when I was researching, trying to find ways to finance City Hall, I was looking at, there was a refinancing that was done in 2012. And that was from 2 bonds that were issued back in 2004. One was for the Public Works facility itself, for about $6 million or so, and then the next one was for, capital improvement projects. Believe it was 4 road improvement projects that were paid solely by special assessments, 100% special assessed. And so when we came to 2012, we refinanced those 2004 bonds, what was remaining in principal on there, brought those together, got a lot better interest rate. I think we are saving close to $440,000 in debt service payments over the life of that payment schedule. And so we rolled those into one bond. But and it was even more complicated, is that it's an advance refunding, which means that we did the refunding, basically a refinance. So we refinanced this in 2012, but the bonds for the 2004 bonds weren't callable until 2014 and 2015, meaning that it's an advance refunding, that we issued debt, basically a second line of debt, that we had to hold in an escrow account for 2 years until we can call those bonds. And so when we called those bonds in, everything had been staying status quo from 2012 to 2014. In 2014, when those bonds were called, we then redirected our building lease rents from Public Works that was paying, or from the Building Internal Service Fund that's paying the bond payment on the Public Works facility. And then there's special assessments for the capital improvement portion of that. We happened to redirect those to the capital improvement fund, which in reality it should stay with the 2012 bond, the debt service, because I'm getting sidetracked here. That 2012 debt service piece of that still had special assessments, deferred special assessments. There's about $1.5 million of special assessments yet to come in on that one. And so we shouldn't be redirecting those off into the capital improvement fund when we have money on this end over here yet to pay off on a debt service. In reality, we were having the building internal service fund was paying both the principal and interest for both bonds. And it shouldn't be. So we're redirecting that payment. And so now the special assessments are coming into the 2012 debt service bond along with the building internal service fund transfer.
Right.
So that transfer is about $460,000 a year. So we can still keep that transfer at $460,000 a year and have that, but now we'll be able to split off $120,000 of that and say, okay, we only need, $340 to go to this 2012 bond, and we can redirect $120,000 of that over to the City Hall capital project fund. And so it was basically, just a kind of an accounting error almost on that end of it, is that, not necessarily an accounting error, just a redirection of where the special assessments went. And so now it's, the right buckets are being hit with the right dollars.
Mayor,
Councilmember Lehman?
Kathy J. and I were here for that refinancing of them bonds, and it wasn't an accounting error. I think the better way of explaining it would be that since you refinanced this bond, but it wasn't callable until 2014, you're still paying this bond while you got this new bond out there that's supposed to be paying for that bond, and you're paying this one too. So when you actually come time to pay this one with this one's much less because you've been paying on it for an extra 2 years. Okay? And you couldn't split this one up because it's one piece when you refinanced it until this one's taken care of.
Correct.
Okay? So now that you can split it up because this one's gone, you're able to take the actual dollar amounts and put it toward the remaining 2012 bond, and anything left over can be allocated to something.
Right.
And you've opted to move that to the City Hall fund.
So advanced refundings are a complicated financing mechanism, but to save $440,000 and have it as a 2-year advance refunding, those are some significant savings that you were smart to take advantage of that at the time, so.
Other questions on this 1.2 here? Proceed.
The next item is $1 million of 2015 general fund excess reserves. Historically, over the last few years, we've had some excess reserves above kind of our fund balance policy, and we've transferred those over to other funds, other debt service funds, other capital project funds, other one-time related expenditures, which is where you want to put excess fund balance towards one-time related items. And so 2015, we'll be coming forward with that final resolution after our audit is done this spring, and then be able to transfer those funds as well. But preliminary numbers show that we would have $1.1 million, or $1 million to transfer to the City Hall Capital Construction Fund out of the general fund for this year. And the same would hold true for 2016. The 2016 budget was basically done the same way the 2015 budget was done, same assumptions on that end of it and such. When we work on this year's budget, we're going to change things up there a little bit and try to get a little bit more accurate, so we're not having these excess reserves in place and such. But if everything holds true for 2016, I would expect that we would be in the same situation this time next year, and so that we would have $1 million available at that point as well too, that we could transfer in 2017 over to the City Hall Construction Project Fund. So,
Any questions on these two pieces of, from the general fund for 2015 or 16? So on the first item on that, from the 2015, that's really already established, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, correct.
Okay.
I think we're estimating about 1.4 or 1.6, somewhere in that ballpark. And I know we have some debt service funds that we have targeted as priorities as well too. But
Any other questions on at least these? I kind of group them together here. Okay, thank you.
so the next two are, I have $500,000 coming from both the sewer fund and the surface water fund. And Bruce is eyeing me up here, so I don't know.
Don't mess with Bruce.
Get ready for the backhand here or
Don't
something.
mess with Bruce, look at.
And kind of my rationale there is that, and it was just a financing thought on that end of it, but in the new City Hall, there are scheduled to be direct departments that directly support the sewer fund and the stormwater fund. Engineering, natural resources and such are programmed right now to be in the City Hall fund itself. Those two funds have the ability to help finance a City Hall facility on that end of it. I thought that, these were reasonable amounts that didn't put excess pressure on those funds and still helped out the general cause and provided and the City Hall does provide a service to those funds, and it's not right now paying necessarily for a city hall facility, it's paying for a public works facility, but here's kind of a one-time lump sum payment to the city hall construction fund, so.
Okay. Questions on these two? If not, thank
So
you.
that concludes the transfers, so that gets me to about $6.85 million of transfers then, for an $8.5 million project. So we're a little bit short, 1.65 million short. Initially, I was looking at the capital equipment fund, looking at that fund balance and thinking that there was sufficient reserves there to help supplant the rest of this. And in the 10-year projections, it all looked fine. It kind of, everything fit. And that was on Thursday of last week. And then Friday, everything kind of hit the fan and things didn't really fit anymore. And I looked past that 10-year projection and looked into kind of year 11 specifically, and there was a lot of capital equipment coming due at that point in time that put kind of any of my excess reserves that I had kind of vanished at that point. They used all those reserves up, and so I didn't feel comfortable utilizing those capital equipment reserves, even though we have a good fund balance in there now. That fund really has some peaks and valleys, and you need to really save over those years to pay for big capital outlay as it comes due for replacement and such. So looking at what options we had left, we'd already kind of scheduled in $500,000 transfer from the sewer fund and another $500,000 from the surface water fund. I didn't feel comfortable transferring funds. I said, okay, let's figure out a borrowing mechanism there, and let's look at if we can do an inter-fund loan then between the surface water fund and the building asset, or the building asset fund itself, and have that payable over 15 years. On the onset, we have the building internal service fund has that about 10 years left on that public works facility, and so it doesn't really have a whole lot of excess. We talked earlier about that, $50,000 to $100,000 of excess balance each year that it has. So there's not a lot of capacity there in those first, now through 2025, but it has a little bit of room there. And then after that public works facility is paid off in 2025, it really grows that we have an additional, 300 and some thousand at least each year to pay that back. And we can pay incrementally up until that point and then pay it back. And then any other, if we were to sell this facility as well too, we could speed that process up and replenish it quicker as well too, so.
Councilor Lehman?
And here's where it gets more confusing. We talk about paying back the public works bonds, but they were paid under refunding of the 2012 refunding bond. So what you're talking about is the portion of what public works rental used to be used to pay for the original public works bond that is now going toward the 2012 refinancing bond. That'll be up in 2025.
Correct.
So just so that we're clear on that.
That original
my
2004,
understanding.
that original 2004 bond was refinanced,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
it still brought over principal into this new bond. So it
Right.
brought over $1 million.
But it's not necessarily a public works building bond because that bond encompasses more than just that.
Right, it encompasses that capital improvement piece of it as well, too.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely. So that's where so those payments would be, fairly light unless we were able to sell this facility. I'm not sure what it's worth, but we could use those proceeds to help supplant that or decrease that loan on a quicker basis. And then we would definitely be able to pay for that at, in years 10 through, or 11 through 15, they'll be able to pay off any remaining balance for sure on that end of it. And looking at the interest rate, right now our investments citywide, we make about 1.25%. We're pretty limited, being a government entity, we're limited on what we can invest in, and so, we're very risk adverse and making sure that we maintain our principal is there. So, I thought it was fair and equitable that we use that same interest rate as a loan to the surface water fund as well too, so it's not out anything in the long run.
My question, internally fund this, we'll look at something like this. So in the end, let's just fast forward and say new city hall is built. The city hall is gonna pay rent back into the governmental building asset internal service fund, right? That rent will be set on the current formula for all buildings. And then also, are we gonna have an extra payment from the city hall on top of the rent that would pay back the inter-service loan? Or would it all be grouped together?
Mr. Mayor, it would all be grouped together. It would just be one rent payment for the new City Hall facility.
And then, would that rent payment be the standard rent payment that calculation used for all other buildings?
Mr. Mayor, that would be my presumption, is that we do that. I know the last couple of years we reduced it, but we have to go back and make sure that we are
So let's say it's.
Proportionally.
Use round numbers, or let's say it's 400 grand a year in rent back into the building fund. But then, let's say 100 of it is gonna get over to the water surface fund to pay Bruce back. Is that how that's gonna work then?
correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
And then, so you've modeled this all out?
Pretty much on a spreadsheet, I've
Yep.
put the numbers together and started out with $8.5 million, and here's where we got to get down to. That's where we got down to 1.65 million left, and that was kind of going
you
through
called
every
Bruce.
little bucket I could find and making sure that I still felt comfortable with
Yeah.
reserve levels and things like that. I don't like
Okay.
knots in my stomach to make things tight on funds. So
Councilmember Luce?
What is current City Hall paying into the fund as rent?
this city hall is, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, we are paying, I think it's about $91,000 a year.
Okay, so we're gonna go from 91 to 400 when we go into the new building.
I just made that number up.
Okay, my bad.
You're getting a good number from this building, but I just used 400 out of just for an example. 'cause
Do we
I
have
wanted
any
to-
idea what the new number will be?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lewis, at this point, I don't have an idea what that number is. We obviously gotta make sure that that number fits into our operating budget and is reasonable on that end of it and such, but still, follows the formula for the other buildings and such.
But
as
it's
well.
reasonable to believe it's gonna be quite higher.
Oh, absolutely, because that'll be depreciated out over, 30 to 40 years or so on that end of it.
You
and
know,
such,
similar
so.
to when the library opened, or the police station, or the
Public
new
Works.
Public Works. I mean, they all pay rent, and that's actually gives us our fund balance and our building funds. That's kind of how that works, is a depreciation fund, so you have money. So you just don't depreciate a building as a capital expense and then have no savings, and then you bond for it again and just do it all over again. This is a very unique, very conservative way of internal financing. Councilmember Lehman?
The 1996, when the building fund started, the intent why that was started was because, well, let's look at what happens without it. You find out that community center needs a roof for $1.5 million. You now take that $1.5 million roof need and you put it right on your budget and you levy it for that year. And you end up having a levy that goes up by $1.5 million, and then the next year, if you don't have a roof, it comes back down. Then you need some other air conditioners or something. 2 years later, your levy goes back up, pays for the air conditioners, drops back down. And over the years, we've decided that instead of doing that, let's set up an account, instead of having these peaks and valleys in a tax rate, that we can hold the tax rate steady. And actually, if you look at the charts, it was from 2002 to 2010, 2009, the tax rate remained flat in the 31 area. What happened the last couple of years is unique, but that was the goal.
And what's coming.
That was the goal of the building fund, to pay for them peaks, and so you didn't have peaks and valleys. I guess some of the questions I have, because I won't hide the fact that I spent some of our finance director's time going over some of this stuff, because I'm kind of a stickler for the detail, but I guess the questions I have is, the original estimate on this building was 7.3, and now we're at 8.5. I'd really like to see us get back toward the 7.3. I understand there's gonna be a little deviation. But then we're not talking about any savings realized from operational side of having everything in one location. We need to have a discussion about the benefits of having our operations in a one campus design. Internally, there's a benefit, but then there's a much different benefit externally for the end user.
Yes, sir, and in looking back at some of the history prior to my being here, and the discussions of why you would want a single campus, and you would want the City Hall co-located essentially with Public Works and the police station, those were much the arguments that were brought forward in April of 2015. And you're absolutely right. I can tell you internally, from an internal services perspective, as the person responsible for this piece of the organization on one side and also Public Works and police and other parts, when you look at this building, it wasn't designed to be a city hall. It was designed to be a bank. And the workflow is very difficult, even something simple as your council chambers and having columns in the middle of it. It's served its purpose over the years, and it's certainly been able to achieve that. But the operational efficiencies, and what I mean by that is the time saved that we can have as a staff, and having managers co-located with their individuals. Right now I have my finance department is up on the top floor, kind of in the ivory tower, whereas in the new city hall, they're designed, the finance director's office is right next to mine. And then on the other side of me is the assistant city administrator's office. So those kinds of internal efficiencies have a direct reflect on how we can do our business that most often not the public will never see. Now, where the public will see is when, as opposed to if I'm Joe Citizen and I know that I need something but I don't know really where to go, but I know that I'm remodeling a portion of my house, and it's like, well, okay, apparently I know I'm supposed to go to City Hall and get a building permit, so I'll go to City Hall. Now, that may not be the right choice for whatever the person is looking to do. They may have to go to engineering, they may have to go to Public Works, they may have to go other places, but if there's nothing that's more frustrating to a citizen when they come down here, they've taken time off work, and they say, okay, Mr. Administrator, I need X. And I look at them and I say, well, I'm sorry, you need to go see the Public Works Department. Well, where's that? And well, why can't I be helped here? This is City Hall. These are those external customer service aspects as to what we do that I hate having to say that, no, I can't help you here. And that campus attitude or that campus concept is that they can come to that one place. They can walk into this building. It's designed to be a city hall. They will walk in that building. There will be somebody right there immediately that can say, how can I help you? And we will have engineering, building permits, planning and development, all located right next to each other, so all of those issues can be taken care of that they might have. If they have an issue that they need to talk to the administration on, it's right up the stairs. And at the top of that stairs, there's going to be somebody to say, hi, what can I do for you? And it's incredibly important from my perspective that we don't let people see this part of our hands, but we let them see this part of our hands, and that's both metaphorically and in reality. This helps us get to that point.
Councilmember Lehman.
2002, we started on this process of purchasing the property next to the police station, well, the property that the police station sits on, for this purpose of eventually building a city hall. It's got pushed back a few times, and at the time, 2002, I supported the concept, and I still do. Just in this last election, I said I would support this concept, providing it wasn't an increase in taxes. And if we're going to do this internally without an increase in taxes and actually try to save some taxes by the internal efficiencies, then I'm okay with that, because we've been working on this for a real long time. We were smart, actually, by buying that property when we did, because if we had to buy that property today, this project would cost us substantially more. Actually, if we would have done it sooner, we would have got better bids probably and saved some more money, but it didn't happen that way. So as long as it's not a tax increase, that we increase our customer service, because I'll tell you what, when I got my fence permit, it was frustrating. I came here, got my permit, went home, read it, had a question, came back down here. They said I had to go to engineering because they do the inspections. I went over there, they were out in the field, waited for the phone call, not knocking anybody, they got work to do. It was pretty frustrating because you're right, you can't get the answer. I wasn't in a hurry, so it didn't really matter. But when a taxpayer is paying his tax bill, they need to know that when they go down and ask questions and need help, that somebody's there to help them. That's what they're paying us for, in all departments. So I want to see efficiencies internally and externally, and you're telling me I'm going to see that. You're telling me it's not going to be a tax increase. And I'd like to see us try to get back to that 7.3 that was projected when it came before us.
Councilman Lewis?
I would like to see the cost come down also. If the efficiencies work, which I hope they do, that'd be great.
Okay. What about this plan, this idea?
Still got a little trouble with that one fund, that 400,000 government building asset internal service fund.
Councilman Whiting?
I see this comes with a recommendation from staff, and just want to make sure that you talked about tying your stomach in knots. Is there any issues here that are going to be of any kind of concern in the future that are just not really answered?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Whitey, not that I see on this end of it. I've had discussions with the administrator and with our interim finance director as well, too, just to make sure that I'm not only being here for a month or so, not overlooking something on that end of it. But I feel very comfortable on that end of it, of where we're at with our financing of this. So I don't foresee it as an issue.
And again, this is a very conservative look at it. I wanted to make sure that, that we weren't going to be in those kinds of situations.
Councilor Mokel, you want to make a comment on this?
Yeah, I just want to commend you, Darren, for being here for a month and coming up with the creative financing, as I like to call it, to get this project done without the increase in taxes. One thing that we talked about as a group is we also talked about what do we do with this building when we move out. And I hope that that will eventually come forward from our staff as well. And I would also recommend that maybe we start a task force sooner rather than later, to look at this building and what can happen for it.
Councilmember Lehman?
I think staff, was it last meeting or 2 meetings ago, pointed out that they're looking at all the various pieces of land that the city owns and asking themselves whether it's something they need now or long-term, or something that they should get rid of. So I would guess this just falls right into that category.
It will. This obviously has a little more kick-out time, but definitely, that's an assessment that we will move forward with.
Okay. For Mr. Nelson, I appreciate this effort that you put forward. You are still the new guy in our community, and we did welcome you a couple months ago. But our town is notoriously conservative, and that's what we look for, especially when you're dealing with the taxpayer money. So I think the history is long here for our community. We've really gone from bank to bank. We really haven't had a place per se to call our own. I believe that it's still prudent. I'll agree with Councilmember Lehman, the long-term planning aspect with what went into the police station and the land was critical. It's actually saving us money today, and how to quantify that is very difficult. The ability to self-finance is incredible. It actually speaks well to our community for the conservative nature of it, to do this internally. I know that in the past, we paid, I think we paid cash for the library. I think we paid
Police
cash for the police station. I think
Creative for the public works.
the public works, we internally financed, I believe, when
We
bonded,
it,
but
we paid the bonds with
use
rental.
the rent depreciation to pay the bond payment, correct? Also, the whole beauty of it to do this without if it could be done without a tax impact, speaks volumes. I'm also too concerned about, or actually not, I'm not concerned. I think the true opportunity does lie in this building, in this lot. Like to see that studied. If we can, down the line, put out an RFP. Think in terms that maybe, think outside the box. Maybe it'll be redevelopment of the building. Maybe it won't. I know that downtown prides, this is a helpful hand to downtown. But what could we replace it with that would give it the downtown vitality? We talked at our workshops, maybe an apartment complex. We have some challenges with the rail, but to put 50 people there that live there. So I think this is truly not the challenge. I think it's the opportunity here in this building. So those are kind of my comments on this, Mr. Lehman, Councilor Lehman.
Well, for discussional purpose, let me get out Resolution 7703, City Hall construction financing by providing the necessary means to finance the construction of City Hall by transfers and interfund loan. Get that motion out there.
All right, I have a motion on the table and looking for a second. Councilor Mokel?
I'll second.
Great. Further discussion?
Yep.
Councilor Lehman?
The one thing that's hard to wrap your head around, which after 14 years I still have a hard time with, is when I hear the word administration, I think the fluff at the top that really doesn't need any additional benefits. And I'm going to miss a few. So I'd like our city administrator, Mr. Reynolds, to fill in the gaps of where I miss. The administration includes payroll, HR, IT, finance, general administration, planning, building inspections, natural resources. What else am I missing?
Well, ultimately, it's the whole organization. But in reality, there are different levels. Clearly, the internal services is probably the biggest piece that when you think of administration, and what that generally is us taking care of our people so they can take care of the citizens. So whether it's finance, whether it's HR, we need to make sure that our employees, for example, I don't want Mr. Loney worrying about whether or not he's going to get paid. I don't want him worrying about issues in regards to finance or anything else. I want him to worry about being the best city engineer and public works director. I want him worrying about building streets and designing streets. So that essentially is what administration is responsible for.
My point is there's much more to administration than Reynolds and his assistant.
Oh.
It's
The whole
encompasses
city.
just so many
Right.
different departments,
Huh.
And it's hard to, it gets a bad label by calling it administration.
And part of my PowerPoint that I'm going to delve into a little later with you this evening specifically talks about the responsibility of your administrator. And I think that'll help as well.
And I'd still like to get this down a little bit lower if we could.
Well, I'm sure, this does not, I don't feel like this really obviously approves the city hall, but it gets a financing plan. I think it may even be tweaked a little more maybe as it goes, but I know this has been worked on for the last, actually, it's been worked on for a long time.
Yeah.
and very methodical about the process. I did receive a letter. I personally received it late this afternoon. A local business commented on this, and I did send it to the council members. I really apologize about the late hour, but we can have, we will have more discussion on that. So, but with that, further discussion? Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna make a motion for a short break.
A second.
Motion for a
5-minute break.
small break, 5-10 minute break. Lehman made a motion, seconded by Mokel. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. We'll reconvene this meeting for March 15, 2016. Moving ahead then to 10F2, selection of a construction manager for City Hall. Mr. Reynolds?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As another piece of the City Hall puzzle, much like we did with the community center, we're making a recommendation that we hire a construction manager for the oversight of the City Hall project. The memo has a lot of background on how we got to here, but essentially I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the process of how we selected who we did. And as you will recall, once we got the approval to start the planning for City Hall, we initially had put out the word that we were looking for a construction manager. We had 6 firms that ultimately applied, that we reached out to, 4 that actually were able to put a proposal. Some just had work commitments that would not allow them to do that. We analyzed, essentially, first, Chris Wilson, the then Assistant City Manager, did the first analysis of it, and then we had an election. And I wanted to take a pause to make sure that we were comfortable with proceeding with this project, because I did not want City Hall to move forward absent, making sure that council was on board. So we both paused the design of the City Hall, and we also paused our search for a construction manager. However, upon both one-on-one discussions with council and our planning session, it became clear that this council was still interested in proceeding with the concept of the City Hall, and so we restarted that process. And part of, if you'll remember at our last meeting, we talked about where we were in general with the plans. The final plans and specifications are due to come in on April 2nd. The next step in the process for us at this point is the hiring of a construction manager. So after that pause, we reinstituted and re-engaged with our individuals that were looking at to be our construction manager, the firms. We whittled it down to 2 different firms. I did some more research, reference checks, and then specifically made a couple of general questions of the firms themselves. I will say that I'm excited about CPMI being a part of the team. I'm really interested in the way they communicate the project in very easy to understand terms for even the general public. And that was one of the things that first got me excited about their proposal. But I'll admit, I also was happy with their price. Although it was not the deciding factor, it certainly was nice that they were ultimately the least costly of the proposals that we had. And I do have representatives of the organization here with us today, so if you would like to hear a little bit about the firm and who will be the on-site manager.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
Questions of the counselor to staff first? Otherwise, the proposed candidate could come forward. Please state your name and address and sign in for the record. And welcome to Shakopee.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council member, staff. My name is Paul Oberhaus, and I represent CPMI. CPMI has been in business for over 45 years. During those years, we have focused primarily on municipal work, including other government agencies, all the way from the federal government down to little cities in the state of Minnesota. About 90% of our work is with municipalities. And one of the key facts that we like to present is about 80% of that work is with repeat clients. We believe that that speaks volumes of how we do our job. Words don't typically convey the excellence that we project, but I think the fact that people are willing to continually hire us time and time again speaks volumes to our abilities. Some of the services we provide include construction management. We're also a general contractor, and we also do work as owner representatives. Some of the projects you may be familiar with that we've done CM on recently is at Como Zoo. Everybody seen the gorillas or the polar bears? We did both those exhibits for those folks. We've also worked on the River Center in St. Paul, the downtown central library, and we're currently working with municipalities in Ashland, Wisconsin, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, Red Wing, Minnesota, and what's my fourth? Chisago City. And those three are, all four of those are fire stations that we're building as a CM. I've been with CPMI for about 28 years. I am a part owner and I'm vice president. We propose that I will be what they call the senior project manager on this project, meaning that I will be your primary contact from the beginning to the end of the project. Cindy, who I'll let introduce herself here briefly, is going to be our on-site personnel. And we also have other people in the office that will support us through either the estimating department or as an assistant project manager to Cindy on site. I am excited to be named as, hopefully you'll actually approve us tonight, but I'm excited to become part of the team. We look forward to working with you all. And one of our simple philosophies is to look for ways to save money. That seems to be a key here tonight. And we do that not only at the beginning of the project, but also through the project. As work progresses, we look at opportunities to evaluate whether there's a better way to do that piece of the work. And if there are, we bring them into the team and discuss those and hopefully come up with a solution that can actually save money but give you the same product. The last thing I like to say is, you know, a serious business being a construction manager, being in the trades, working day to day. We take our jobs very seriously, but we also want to have fun when we do it. And I hope you all can understand and appreciate that. Cindy?
Good evening,
Hi.
Mayor, council members, staff. My name's Cindy Dillahunty, and I will be the project manager through the duration of this project. Probably not what you expected to see tonight. My story begins about 20-some years ago, and I had a project architect that sent me on a site to review a pay app. And I nodded, I'm sure. First time on a job site in my whole life. Okay, I'll go. I think I wore tennies that day for whatever reason, but I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I loved looking at the guts of the building, how everything went in together, and I haven't really spent much time back in the office since then. I got my construction management degree, master's from Arizona State University about 12 years ago, and 11 years ago last week, as a matter of fact, I started working for CPMI. And CPMI has given me the opportunity to play a lot of different roles and keep things very interesting for me, which I like. Through this project, I'll be able to help in the estimating, I believe, correct? So I'll get to know the project very well through that. Hopefully come up with some ideas on some value engineering and some things we see along the way as we estimate. And then start the construction project once we're ready to break ground. So we'll see me on site every day, and we'll start kind of with the submittal process and take it from there. Scheduling and just about anything else that needs to be done every day.
Questions of the proposed candidate company? Councilmember Lehman?
Mayor, I don't know which one to address my question to, but my question is, are you folks directly involved in the bid alternate process?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. We're kind of getting into the game a little late, apparently, but I don't know if you've actually gone through development of alternates, but we certainly encourage that simply because we want to make sure that there is opportunity to control the budget depending on what the bids are. Hopefully there's somewhere between 3 and 5% of the budget developed into alternates. If they're not, we can certainly still look at those. 2 weeks is about all the time apparently we have before we want to get the plans from the designers. And then we do our piece, which is to help put together the last of the front-end specifications. And the most important aspect of that is the summary of work specifications that actually defines what each of the bid packages are. So we will take that under advisement if you say aye tonight. And that'll be first thing we start this week.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Reynolds, you want to make a comment on that?
Yes, sir. We currently do have alternates as part of the project. Matter of fact, Bruce Schwartzman and I were talking about them today. So, you know, there will be bid alternates that come forward.
He's with BKV, the architect?
Correct.
Okay. Let the audience know.
Do you have, yeah? Do you have other comment? Otherwise, other comments? I got a couple. So, I'm looking at your hours here, in part of your bid, and you have, you know, 8 hours for a senior, PM and the main PA at 173 hours per month, plus an assistant at 80, 253 hours per month. How, are you gonna be on site 24 hours a day, or?
No. Per month, full-time equivalent is 173 hours. That will be Cindy.
Yeah.
I'm the senior PM at the 8 hours. That's per month. And then we have another person, an assistant project manager that's not here tonight, that'll be on site part-time to assist Cindy.
So you're on site every day for a large chunk of time, correct?
Every day during construction.
And I'm gonna bring up a situation years ago, I believe, when we built our library, and maybe I'm off by a building, but we had the architect and they were designing the HVAC unit on the top, and we had internal construction manager, and the contractor, and then it came out that our city ordinance requires that to be screened. And then we had a discussion about who pays for that, the architect, the construction person, and everybody goes, well, we didn't know. Of course, the construction company is blaming the architect says we didn't, yeah. And so, I guess, in some cases, on change orders, you would work, if you were hired, you would work for us, correct?
Absolutely.
And how would you resolve something like that?
I would play like a referee. I would gather all the information from the owner, the contractors, and the architect, evaluate what the documentation is that I have, put it all together, evaluate it, and make a recommendation for settlement.
Okay. And then my next question is, over the years, we've had construction managers, and they have worked on a percentage of the bid or a fixed cost. It's funny, one time we worked on a percentage, and then the bids came in so low that the construction manager said, oh, hey, you know, thank you very much, but I'd like now a fixed contract. It was a very difficult situation. So tell me what goes into, I mean, a lot of your hours are here and some of your expenses, but obviously, do you factor in the size and scope of the project?
Correct.
Okay.
Our experience essentially tells us what it takes to get the work done. How many hours of service does it take to get the job done? That's what we portray in our fee schedule. I don't like working off of percents. It incentivizes, I can't say the word, help me out. Incentivizes me to not be proactive in trying to get the best value for the dollar. If I'm going to look at one of those change orders that you reference, if the contractor gives me a price for $1,000 and I get 5% markup on it, why would I want to see if it's a fair value or not? I'd rather keep it high. Whereas when I'm working for you, I'm non-biased. I'm looking at it as neutrally as I can, and if there's a value there that I think is excessive, Cindy or I are going to negotiate with that contractor to get it to the lowest value we can, the lowest fair value for the work that's being asked for. Our fee doesn't change. Our negotiation with that contractor is part of that 173 hours per month.
Yeah. Councilmember Lehman?
Just for the record, it was probably the city council that changed that ordinance in the middle of that project.
That happens.
Other comments, questions of?
Thanks for coming down in person. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. Councilor Lehman?
Move to authorize this appropriate city official to enter into a contract with Cost Planning and Management, Inc., CMPI, for construction management services for the City Hall construction project in the amount of $28,600 for the pre-construction phase and $267,328 for the construction phase, for a total of $295,928.
I have a motion and a
Second.
Counselor Whiting, a second. Further discussion? 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 All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Welcome aboard.
Motion passes. Thank you. Welcome to our community. All right. Now the highlight of our meeting tonight, 10F3, PowerPoint presentation, role and responsibilities of council and administrator. Mr. Reynolds will present.
And everybody leaves.
No, lock the door. Thank you.
All right, council. I'm going to go through this PowerPoint. It's about 15, 16 slides. I want you to know, first of all, that it's very broad. It's designed to be very broad. It's designed basically to talk a little bit about our prospective roles, but also to spot some issues. And the whole, when I went through law school, one of the things that one of my best professors ever told me is that, you know, you're not expected to know everything. But what you are expected to do is to be able to spot issues so you can then go back and figure out what the solution is. So that's kind of how I want to present this tonight. And at the end of the presentation, always remember that if you have questions, you have a city attorney and you have a city administrator that you can go to. Or you also have the League of Minnesota Cities, which has an incredible, I mean, from my experience so far, it is one of the top leagues in the nation, and they really do want to help you and the city in general. So please keep them in mind as well. So this is a very broad view of the city council and the city administrator's responsibilities. Portions of this actually come from a league presentation that Mayor Mars and I attended, and so he will see some of this that looks familiar. And this is one of the quotes that came out of that particular conference for new and returning city council members. Don Borrett, a former ED of the National Leagues of Cities, said, "Running for public office at the local level is an irrational and unnatural act. You permit yourself to be scrutinized more than an amoeba under a microscope for below market pay so that citizens can call you day and night. And for what? The right to make decisions that will tick off half the folks in town. So why do you do it? And here's the meat of the matter. Basically, to make a difference into your community and improve the quality of life for your citizens." That is what we're all here for, and a lot of times that gets lost in the daily conversations. But I have a lot of respect. This is my profession. This is what I do for a living. But I have a deep amount of respect for those that decide to come into the elected sphere of office, because this is not your full-time job. And I don't think that, frankly, a lot of people understand the amount of time it takes. It's a heck of a lot more time than a couple hours, a couple nights a week. And especially since Mayor Mars got in office, we've been having more than just a couple hours a night. But in all seriousness, this, you know, I think it's important that everybody understands that what you do is for a reason. And a lot of times you don't get the credit you deserve for that. So what is the role of an individual council member? All of this information, as I said, for most part, can be found in the League of Minnesota Cities, Handbook for Minnesota Cities, among other documents. I have all these available, so if any time that you want to look at them or get copies of it, we can certainly make that happen. So, but why is this important? Well, the biggest reason is that if you're not careful, you can be held personally liable in some certain situations. So I kind of want to, once again, you know, this is the issue. So if there's that issue out there and you think that you're concerned about something or you're not sure about it, reach out to those that I talked about earlier. Your duties are to be performed almost without exception by the council as the whole. An individual council member has very little actual responsibility. It is as the body where you get your power. the most important single responsibility is that participation at council meetings. As you are aware, an individual council member doesn't have the ability to order around city staff. And the reason for that, for those in the audience that may not understand, is that it's the council that determines what the city should do and what city staff should do. And if we have an individual council member that has another way of looking at it, which is great, but that needs to come to the council so it can be vetted, and then the individual council, or excuse me, then the council as a whole can make that determination. And then when that happens, we're good to go. Some of the things that, and this comes again from the program that Mayor Mars and I attended, they're looking at how does a council act and what are some of the guideposts or things that a council normally should look at. We as opposed to I, you remember that you're that group, you are that one single entity. It's always very important to have clear and consistent rules of procedure. A lot of times if we're not sure what those rules are, we probably need to bring them back and dust them off and have them looked at. In the last couple of weeks, you know, we clearly have some things that we got to bring back and have everyone look at and make a determination on. This is a very important piece for me. All members receive the same information. I have a responsibility to make sure that all of you have the information you need to make the decisions. So a lot of times if an individual council member is asking me a question, I want to make sure that, and frankly, other council members may also have the same question. I need to make sure that all of you have that information. So if someone asks me a question, I'm going to funnel that out to all of you to make sure that everybody understands what's going on. Respect for each other. Sometimes that's the position. And abide by the group's decisions. In other words, once we make a decision, we bind around that decision and we move forward and try to make things as best we can. And finally, to set clear direction and policy. It's important that we have participation in all the issues by council members, that we focus on policy and not politics, and understand that it's okay to discuss, debate, and disagree. That's all part of the political process. I want to remind you also to always be concerned about those issues that are in your purview and also those issues that are in my purview from a supervisory standpoint as well. And finally, to play a supportive role in the group as a whole. So what is it that the council as a whole is responsible for? We've kind of talked about what an individual council member is responsible for and kind of that team dynamic. But what is the next step? You as that body, what do you have the responsibility for? A big piece of that is making sure I'm doing my job, supervising the administrator. An incredibly important piece of your role is also to formulate policy, and we'll talk in a few minutes about what that means. And finally, to exercise your statutory powers. There are some things that by state law that you are given the power to do. A lot of your time should be really focused on that policy issue and being that conduit between citizens and the city. It's always important for me to remind myself that although this is my job and I have a pretty good understanding of city operations, 99.9% of the citizens don't. And much as we were talking, Councilor Lehman, in regards to City Hall, there may be somebody that needs something but really don't know how to get that solution or that answer. Part of that role is contacting you. And you can facilitate getting them the help they need or the answers. And you know, I will say that I've been very impressed as a whole, from all of you in regards to that's called constituent service from my old time in the U.S. Senate. You know, that is an incredible part of your role as an elected official. If I'm a citizen and I need some help with something, I'm going to call you and I'm going to say, hey, you know, what can I do? And then you take that and say, hey, Mr. Reynolds, let's help this guy find out his answers. So what is this thing we call policy? Well, most people think of it as an arbitrary set of rules rigidly enforced, resulting in total frustration of employees and community. What it really should be is a set of high-level decisions serving as a guide for lower-level decisions. But what it really means to you, it's a 3-5 vote. What policy is what you determine it to be. And that can be 5-0, that can be 4-1, or that can be 3-2. So you ultimately are the ones that make that determination. So when you look at the council as a whole with authority and responsibility, we've kind of talked about your job description. Now we're going to go talk about the authority and responsibility that you have as part of that. Judging qualifications and election of your members is what you've done at least once since I've been here, basically saying that the vote is good. Setting and interpreting rules governing your own proceedings. We certainly have that down. Exercising city powers that the law does not grant to others. Legislating, which is that policy, enacting ordinances by a majority vote. Directing enforcement of city ordinances. In other words, Mr. Reynolds, police chief, we need you to take care of these issues. Appointing the administrator and some employees. Managing city financial operations. Incredibly important piece of your role, that oversight. Appointing members of boards, conducting intergovernmental affairs. You have the responsibility, ultimately, of approving any joint powers agreements between one political body or another political body. Protecting the welfare of the city and its inhabitants. Your health, safety, and welfare, big part of your role. Providing community leadership. And transacting city business, the part that is not all that exciting or fun, but you know, every meeting we have, we come in and we bring bills forward, we bring projects forward that you have the responsibility for approving. The role of the mayor. The role of the mayor has all the powers and duties of council members, plus you're the official head of the city. You get to do all the fun things, glad handing and signing proclamations and signing official documents. And the most underrated piece of the mayor in Minnesota law is that you, Mr. Mayor, are the official weed inspector.
I see that.
So we're going to have a 4-hour course on weed inspection.
I have to get trained on it.
We're going to get you all trained up so you know exactly what weeds are out there and you can inspect them.
Is that in Colorado? Or?
Does that come with a power tool, or I took it out?
Phil, I can help you out with that. I used to do that for the city about 20 years ago.
It comes with the power of appointing an assistant weed inspector.
Oh, I don't know. My wife doesn't like me playing with power tools.
Who would have known?
So
Who would have known?
I'll see what I do on the training.
And then also, obviously, in times of emergencies, the mayor has that ability then to declare an emergency. Okay, so what are my roles? My roles are actually pretty clear. They're set out in city code. I am the chief administrative officer of the city and shall be responsible to the council for the proper administration of all affairs of the city. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, it means that I supervise all departments, offices, and divisions. Ultimately, if something goes wrong, ultimately, I am responsible. It is my role to make sure that things are done correctly. I properly screen and select or recommend individuals for employment, suspension, or termination. I develop and issue all administrative rules, regulations, and procedures that are not policy. So essentially, we take that policy, and then I break it down and basically use it as that overarching guiding post for what comes down throughout the organization. I prepare and submit an annual budget. I take this very, very strongly as part of my role, and I will be playing a lot more involved part into the budget process than what this community is probably used to. I make no apologies for that. I'm ultimately responsible for that budget, so my hands are going to be deeply into it. I attend and participate in all council meetings, enforce all laws and provisions of the code. I have the ability to purchase or enter into contracts for previously budgeted item services not to exceed $15,000. I will say that's a little low from what I'm used to, and I'll probably come back to talk about that with justification, obviously. I make recommendations to you for actions to improve the health, safety, and welfare of the community or for administration improvement. Essentially, that's the catch-all. If there are things that need to be fixed, we're going to bring that forward to you. Whatever you want me to do is also part of my job description. What I mean by that is that as the body. So if the body votes for me to do something, it suddenly becomes part of my job description. In Shakopee, I accept resignations except from department heads, police captains, and sergeants. And finally, hire and promote and appoint employees for positions that have been previously budgeted and are not above the halfway point in the pay range. Okay, I talked a little earlier about that personal liability piece, and so now we're kind of issue spot. These are the things that if you find yourself scratching your head about some things, these are when you should reach out to those that I talked about earlier, me, the city attorney, the League of Minnesota Cities, who can get you some assistance and some knowledge in what you need to do. The city will defend you in a lawsuit. We have insurance for this purpose if you are acting in the performance of the duties of your position and you are not guilty of malfeasance. Malfeasance is a legal term. It's the willful commission of an unlawful or wrongful act in the performance of your official duties, which is outside the scope of the authority of your public public official responsibilities, and which infringes upon the rights of others. So if you're not doing your job and you move outside that realm, you can be in trouble. There are exceptions to that, our insurance covering you for that. The exceptions are intentional torts. You intentionally do something to cause harm. Assaults, sexual harassments, and defamation.
Can I ask one question?
Yes,
on
sir.
that last slide?
Sure.
Is that of council and or staff?
That's anybody acting in their public, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, within the scope of your public duties. So if I did something, but it was a part of my duties, and we were sued, then we would be covered.
No, it just seemed like, I wanted to ask a question, because I know that you're talking to the council, and that's fine. Then that pertains to city employees as well.
That's correct, yes, sir. Another one of those issues to, always be aware of, is gifts. Understand that an interested person may not give a gift or request another to give a gift to a local official. A local official may not accept a gift from an interested person. I just have a rule. I just don't accept gifts, period. I don't care what they are. I just don't do it. It's just not worth the hassle. There are some exceptions. Services to assist an official in the performance of your duties, such as consultation, free consultation, advice, a plaque or a similar memento, a trinket costing $5 or less, or food or beverage at a reception, meal, or meeting away from your place of work.
And then I was, at the last item there, I just want to, I've spoken in front of a couple groups, and Rotary, they provide you lunch. You're a guest of theirs to be
Yes, sir.
their speaker, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
And that's fine.
Okay.
Another issue is conflicts of interest. Conflicts of interest occur when an individual has a personal interest in a transaction. It can be contractual or non-contractual and include decisions in which personal involvement, gain, or financial benefit exists for you as the decision maker. There are some general rules that follow along under Minnesota law on this. Now, I will tell you that when it comes to conflicts of interest, please call the city attorney. Case law comes out all the time that modifies this. We want to make sure that if there are any concerns whatsoever, we get the city attorney to sign off on it. General rule number 1 is an officer who is authorized to take part in any manner in making any sale, lease, or contract in official capacity shall not voluntarily have a personal financial interest or personally benefit therefrom. There are multiple exceptions. There are probably 15 to 20 exceptions to this rule. Just recognize that if something like that comes up, you get the advice so we can take care of it. General rule number 2, and these are very general, no member of a council shall be directly or indirectly interested in any contract made by the council. Number 3 is that if the money earned under the contract is used to support a family so that the council member derives some benefit, it is an indirect interest. In other words, what works for you works for your family. We can't have somebody giving something to your family if they can't give it to you. Number 4, neither the mayor nor any city council member may be employed full-time by the city. That's actually an easy one. And any official who has a personal economic interest that may conflict with public interest in considering an official action generally is disqualified from participating in that action. That includes me, by the way. And finally, I wanted to touch briefly on open meetings law. we should always be concerned when we have a gathering of officials where at least a quorum is present and issues relating to official business are discussed or information relating to official business is received or action taken, that must be made in a public meeting. There are multiple exceptions to this as well. And I've listed some of those, labor negotiation, performance evaluations, although I will say with performance evaluations, my performance evaluations, I think in the future should be public, but I think I've told you that in private already. And obviously security briefings or when we're trying to buy real estate. So that is just designed to be a very brief, very topical.
That was a good overview. Councilmember Lehman?
So the comment, when you say contact the city attorney, are we doing that through you or directly?
Councilor Lamy, you do not need to do that through me. I think it's incredibly important that if there, for example, if there's some issue that's dealing with the city administrator and you need an unbiased, you think that there might be an issue there, then by all means, call the city attorney or call the League of Minnesota Cities.
Well, usually over the years, if I've needed a city attorney for something, I usually just go right through the city administrator and have.
You can certainly do that.
Ask you the question,
Yeah.
and then you can contact them and let me know what the answer is.
I can certainly absolutely be that conduit, but it doesn't need to be that way is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, when we figure out which way you want it, then if we're gonna go to where we're just gonna contact them directly, it's gonna get awful expensive. I'm okay if that's the way we're gonna go, let's just be consistent, but then we're gonna have to have everybody.
Well, I don't think there needs to be, I don't think you can be consistent in that regards. I mean, if there's something that is dealing with me, then you wouldn't want to
Right.
contact me.
Right.
You'd want to contact the city attorney. But on any day-to-day issue, certainly, you know, I'm an attorney as well. You know, I certainly can give an initial read on things, but more often than not, I'm sending Mr. Thompson an email or giving him a phone call to asking his opinion on it because, after all, that's what he does.
Okay. You get your card before you leave.
Other comments, questions? I enjoyed your presentation. And I think that, like your administrator's report that you've been giving, I think, I don't know, for me, I hope that we find value in these presentations. I know the extra step on the finance presentation last week with that extra piece of some informational thing, I think always goes along well, goes well, and well received by the council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If there's no other questions.
Oh,
Well, Mayor,
Councilmember Lehman?
and I'll just add to that. I think it's beneficial, even if it's from, you know, when Bruce did his presentation on how they do that cured in place piping and what the life expectancy and how they do it and stuff. It's kind of it's nice to know how that's done and get that information, because when somebody asks us about it, we're just like, I don't know. Well, we're experts on it now. You know, we could explain it just as good as anybody else. So I think that's great information to have. Appreciate the PowerPoint. Don't have any questions, except I'm more confused now than I was before you started.
But what's the answer? The answer is when you get confused, you call either me or the city attorney, and we'll help you through it. Our role is to help you succeed, and if you have questions, then I want to be able to answer those questions and facilitate you to be able to make any decision that you need to make. So that's how I look at it in general.
Kathy?
Oh, no, I'm good, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, great. Let's move down to 11, liaison reports and administrator report. Kathy? Councilmember Mokel?
Well, along with you, Mayor Mars, we attended the groundbreaking at Vaughn Field yesterday for the school board, with the school board. And then last night, there was the refunding of some bonds for the school projects. And then in our next meeting for 169 mobility study is set for May 12th.
May 12th? Okay, excellent. Councilmember Whiting?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. SPUC met and worked on their governance policy plan and Third Avenue project along with the city, approved that. The Diversity Alliance met with the International Festival, and that's going along well. Getting into some of the details of having that event separate from Derby Days, and that is Friday, July 9th. Hopefully everyone can make it. Scale was held last Friday. Congratulations to Mayor Mars as the new vice chair of Scale. Elko's mayor is now the chair. We had an interesting presentation. And I also want to mention, I thank you for your presentation tonight, Mr. Reynolds. Obviously, there was a news article that was put out this week by the Shakopee Valley News. We heard Mr. Edstrom talk about it at the recognition of citizens in that portion. From some of the things Mr. Reynolds had presented, in my ability what I felt my job was doing my job, and for transparency in our local government, I did contact Mr. Reynolds and Mr. Thompson about investigating what I felt was an open meeting law violation, and under some of the things that he had mentioned, the proper administration of all affairs and enforcing all laws and codes is part of his duty. I thought that was the proper channel to go. They have since said, and through the presentation, that it's more of a council and a body decision to move that forward. I still think it's important. I think transparency in our government is important. So I will make a motion to direct the appropriate staff to contact unbiased group to investigate what I consider as an open meeting law violation in through the candidates for EDAC.
And I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion, Councilor Lehman.
I'm going to share a quote that is burned into my soul. Quote, Matt, Councilor Mokel and Tabke were in my office this morning at 8:30 asking for my resignation, saying they had three, possibly four votes lined up for my resignation. Are you one of them? Unquote. Now, to me, when he came down after that meeting to my shop to ask me that question, would imply that he's saying that he was told by two members in his office that a third member has already agreed to this, which would be an action that would be coming before council to remove an acting city administrator. That, to me, is a gross violation of the open meeting law. When Kathy and I are serving on the school board facility task force, and Tabke walks in with a PowerPoint for a $34 million community center expansion with three members now present at that meeting without it being open to the meeting or the meeting even knowing it was happening, because I didn't know it was going to happen until it happened, with the school superintendent, two school board members, and our respective financial teams, that was a direct violation of the open meeting law. That action came to council that night at the direction of the two school board members and Kathy Mokel. So if you want to talk about transparency, transparency would have been to give me a call and give me a heads up that you and Kevin were going around my back to reschedule candidates after we had an agreement that if they didn't show up, we weren't going to consider them. Now, you can change that to say, well, if they decided they didn't want to show up. Well, obviously, when somebody doesn't show up for an interview, they've made a decision they didn't want to show up. So you can spin it however you want. The fact is, we had an agreement at the beginning of the process that if individuals didn't show up, we weren't going to consider them. That changed when your friend, Tom Frazier, who was called right after he didn't show up by Kevin to tell him you guys are going to reschedule him. I found out from staff, and then you brought staff into it by lying to staff, telling staff that Matt's on board with this. Matt didn't even know about it until the next day when I got a list of candidates that were that were rescheduled. I got the list at 150. And I asked staff, what's this all about? Staff says, I was told you were on board. I'm like, I knew nothing about it. Matter of fact, when we left Wednesday night, we had Kevin's phone number. We were supposed to finish with the people that were already scheduled for Thursday. We were going to make a recommendation, and we were going to call Kevin and ask him and tell him, here's what we came up with. What's your input? So that whole process changed. I have a real hard time with having a process in place for interviewing people in the private sector or in the government sector to say, you're going to follow this process and the other candidate that's applying for the same job is going to follow a different process. To me, that leaves the city open for the person that followed process A to not be considered, and the person that was made concessions to be considered for person A to say, I was not interviewed equally. And I won't support any candidate that didn't follow the same process that was put forward for any other candidate. That's where my position is. And, you know, you can call it whatever you like. I can go down a list of things in the past. I never brought these issues up for challenge for a couple of reasons. I don't see it as my responsibility to be the political police of any member of this council. I've been on how many different councils where we pass rules that we're all supposed to get along and work together and recognize that everybody's taking their actions, whatever their position might be, for the betterment of the community. And we're supposed to believe that everybody's doing what they're doing because they believe it's the best thing for this community. I've never challenged any of this because A, I knew it wouldn't go anywhere because there happened to be 3 people in the majority at the time. And B, I just didn't think it was proper to have a vote position that the 3 may have won on that I disagree with, and to make it worse by spinning these other issues into it. I'm more than happy to take the political outcome of a 3-2 or 4-1 even, and say, you know, I voted this way because this is what I feel. They see it differently. The majority rules. It's called the democracy. I can live with that because they didn't take me outside and shoot me. It's not China. So, you know, you can spin it however you want, but I don't believe there's any wrongdoing or any bad intention. I told you what my intention was. It is what it is.
Councilmember Whiting.
Moment to clarify, this issue is not about the candidates for the EDAC. That process was handled here at the board. They were voted on. This is about the process of how that was handled before the vote for those members.
Yeah. Well, I see there was a breakdown in the process of the interviews of the candidates. That was a subcommittee of which 3 members, and I believe that 2 of those members worked outside of the quorum in an open meeting violation, but according to the paper that you helped bring about, that you wanted some notice on this, I actually did show a list of candidates to you and Mr. Lehman, but I also recall that I showed that list to both of you, and I didn't discuss it with you. I showed it. Also, I showed that list before the official list of candidates was even drawn up, or I didn't have it. It wasn't even available. So I showed you a list of citizens that may or may not have applied. I didn't know because I hadn't seen the list of candidates. I am a very honest and fair person. I do believe in proper process. I do believe that there were second chances given, calling candidates, making arrangements, not including the other representative on that. And when Mr. Whiting, when you talk about transparency, that's what it's about. You know, I have an email chain here that I'll hand to you. That one of them says, call Matt. You never did. Matt got called a day later by staff. I believe what your intent here is on me. And we can certainly have a motion and a second on the table. And because it seems that I'm the target of this, well, naturally, I have abstained from voting. And if there's any further discussion on this, there were two other council members that weren't really involved that were quoted in the paper, but if they have any talking points that they would like to bring up.
I'm good.
Councilmember Luce?
I thought we voted on this last time.
No?
Do we want to vote on it every week, every meeting?
No, we,
Fine.
okay. Councilmember Lehman?
Is there any council member here, or past council member for the last 15 years, or any staff member from the last 15 years that would like to step forward and tell me that they believe they can tell me how to vote on any issue?
Call the question.
Okay. Councilmember Mokel?
She called the
Call the
question.
question?
Notice
All in favor, say aye.
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 Those opposed?
Aye.
I abstain. Motion does not carry, 2-2. Going back to your liaison report, Councilor Whiting?
No, that was it.
All right, we'll start down here. Councilmember Luce?
I attended the county's transportation, newly adopted county transportation board. We're just working out the bugs as to the wording of all the meetings, how they're gonna be handled and everything, so there's pretty much nothing to say at this time.
Fine. Councilmember Lehman?
169 Corridor Coalition, and this might be the same study that Councilor Mokel's talking about, not sure, but they're doing a two-part study from 41 to 55, 394 is phase one. Phase two is from 41 down to Mankato, Rochester. The phase two part is more of a transit. Is it viable at this time? What might the options be? When might it be viable? When might the need be there? But under the first transportation portion, I did bring up the fact that this council has voted 5-0 that within their study they have these little areas identified of where small improvements could have big impacts. And they're classifying the 69, 169, 13, 21 parking lot in the morning there as one of them areas, which I was happy about that. They're not electing officers until September, I believe it was. Change of folks. And what was the other one? They had a presentation by Jefferson and Land to Air. Land to Air is looking at possibly filling in gaps between Jefferson, which does more of the longer distances, and what we offer through MVTA. So they just did a presentation, no decisions were made. There was one thing that I wanted to bring up that was brought up at that meeting. It was the county has Land to Air on their website, on their transit website, but we didn't know if ours linked to the county's transportation MBTA options. Basically what they're getting at is if Shakopee and Scott County doesn't offer it through their MBTA and their local stuff, we want to make sure that people have that third option available because it might also require a piece that we offer. Okay, so it's a filler of a gap. And I said I'd bring it up and see if that was, if our website links to Scott County's because Scott County's already has it on there. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. In the last couple weeks, I did attend the school district groundbreaking with Councilmember Mokel for Vaughn Field. I met with Senator Pratt and Representative Lunan at a breakfast a week ago. That was great. Whatever they're at, they are our advocates if we need something on the city level. I think we would find support there. I did speak in front of the senior group at the old log cabin there, and that was great. Great crowd. I also did attend scale with Counselor Whiting and was appointed to chair on that. Just a point, we may have all seen a letter about some traffic around our new restaurant. Again, where there's success, there is impact, and I believe staff's looking at that. We may see that, some recommendation before us back on April 5th, if that timing goes right. So that's all I had on my report. And now we have the administrator's report. Mr. Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to briefly talk a little bit about our major organizational people. We don't have whatever that phrase is. It's a late evening. Those employees that we're looking to recruit. Our HR manager, we've done our initial look at the multiple applications. I think we had 36 applications that came in for that position. We whittled it down to 10. We're going to have a first round of interviews that essentially is just to whittle it down to 4 or 5 when we will have bigger interviews, having a lot more people involved, including at least one member of council for those interviews. Our Director of Planning and Development closed on Friday. I've heard that we have 26 applicants for that. I have not reviewed those yet at this point, but I'm looking forward to reviewing those. And then finally, I hope to have the Assistant City Administrator position on the street in the next 2 weeks. And that's all I have.
Excellent. All right. Other business, Mr. Lehman?
I have one thing that I want to bring up, and I'm glad Captain Robson from the police department is here. The 101 corridor at First and Prairie, I guess I'll say, where my shop is located. I've noticed the police park there quite a bit, doing a lot of speed work. If you're speeding, you should probably get a ticket. Don't disagree with that. But after driving that corridor, there's not very many speed limit signs that tell people what the speed is. So I guess my question to council is, can we have the road safety crew take a look at that and see if there's actually signs that tell people what the speed limit is? Because we do have a lot of speeders, obviously. And if there's adequate signing and they're speeding, by all means, give them a ticket. If there's not adequate signing, let's put up some speed limit signs.
Yes.
Mr. Reynolds? Yeah? Yes. Okay. Councilor
Isn't that
White?
a county road, or we'd still be responsible for that, or?
County road?
We'll find out, and if necessary, if it's the county's responsibility, we can request signage.
They might not have put them all back up after the recon on that road. I don't know.
Yeah, we'll track it down and find out.
Councilmember Luce?
I've noticed on the north side of Second Avenue by Spencer, where the new restaurant is, it's posted no parking on Second Avenue, but consistently there's cars parked there, and I don't believe any tickets have been issued.
Okay, we can look into that. I know that we did receive, that's kind of where the letter.
I believe that there were a couple vehicles ticketed. I'm pretty sure, Councilman Luce, but that being said, that issue will be coming to the Safety Committee on May 29th. They'll take a look at it and then hopefully have some recommendations on the 5th of April.
May 29th or March 29th?
March. Thank you.
One
Councilor Whiting?
follow-up to that, can we make sure that the people that wrote the letter, that are signed off on that letter, is informed about the time and date of when we're gonna be discussing it at council?
I was going to do that tomorrow morning after this meeting, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Before we move to adjourn, we have a regular meeting April 5th, but let's remind the council here that we have a joint meeting with the county, the township board, and on next Tuesday on the 22nd.
Yes, sir, and that will be in the county building, not here.
At the county board?
At the county,
Okay.
correct.
So,
7 o'clock?
yeah, at 7 o'clock?
It is at 6 o'clock.
6, I think. We're gonna adjourn till then, though, not
Correct.
till the 5th, right?
Yes, that is an incorrect.
So, with that, I do need a
March 22nd, 6 p.m.
March 22nd, 6 p.m. at the
Scott County Government Center.
Yep.
Correct, yes, sir.
Is that in their chambers? Or
It is.
Yep. That's been planned for a couple weeks. Mr. Thompson, do you have a comment? Okay. Any other business before this council? Councilmember Lehman?
Motion to adjourn to March 22nd,
Yep.
6 PM, Scott County Boardroom.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.